Joining us now, a candidate for the U.S. Senate in a race that is neck and neck. Joe Donnelly, of course, is the Democrat incumbent in Indiana, and Mike Braun is a former Indiana state rep and Republican candidate who hopes to unseat him. This race is tight, and we just can't wait to find out what the good people of Indiana are thinking. I think Indiana, and I think of Mike Pence and Larry Bird. That's what I think of. Mike, how are you? Good to talk to you.
Very good. Good to be on.
So where are we in this race? I mean, I know you have internal polls, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on internal polls because they don't mean a lot to me. But where are we in this race right now?
I think we've actually built a lead. Real clear politics averages and a couple recent public opinion polls, as well as our internals from the Kavanaugh episode. We could feel a big boost, and I think it's been built into a lead that's helped us here and, enhanced the one in North Dakota and Missouri. And we feel real good about it, momentum, everything on our side, and I really believe we're going to win it.
So your opponent says, he supports Trump too, does he?
Well, only on the stuff that doesn't count. And voted against tax reform and, was for Obamacare, all the stuff that's really important. He's 100% lined up with Chuck Schumer and the liberal side of his party, and that record's being fully flushed out here through this campaign, and that's the reason we're going to win it with or without the Kavanaugh bump. But just a lot of good things have happened. We've run a good campaign, and we've resourced it competitively and great fundraising, and not a whole lot different than executing a business plan, and we feel good about where we are.
Well, Mike, the concern today on the part of the media, these packages that arrived in the offices and residences of Trump critics, prominent people from John Brennan to Joe Biden. And what is your take on this? The criticism of the president was almost instant, even though he condemned this, of course, and asked for national unity. It was not good enough. And they're blaming him for creating the atmosphere that resulted in these packages being sent.
Well, I think the president's been blamed for everything, gets no acknowledgement for the main thing he's done. The reason I'm running is I wouldn't be running if it had been another outcome in 2016. We got a rare opportunity to kind of shake the system and fix what's broken. And they're still relitigating, I think, the 2016 race, and that's why he gets no credit for the great agenda that's out there that's exciting Hoosiers. And he was popular in 2016 here among conservatives, and even more so. And I even think the people that maybe don't love his style are going to look at the results. And I think that's why I'm winning this race. That's why Joe Donnelly has tried to become so Trumpian when, he never, he's been always with the liberal side of his party. So I think this is just another example of how they try to distract and give him absolutely no credit for all the good things happening.
Maxine Waters said today she responded to these packages saying, "I ain't scared," and she called on the president to take responsibility for the kind of violence we're seeing for the first time in different ways. Well, this was a year plus after Steve Scalise was almost killed at the hands of a rabid Trump hater and a Bernie Sanders supporter. And so everyone seems to forget what happened. And if that guy wasn't stopped by the security, there would have been dozens dead.
Exactly. I mean, it's a litany of, I think the real exposure to this kind of approach occurred in the Kavanaugh hearings. And all of us challenging Democrats in these red states, the amount of just absolute negative lies and distortions that Schumer's PACs dump in through George Soros and the rest of them. I think it's exposed an ugly underbelly of what they're about, which is a lack of any message, completely obstructing and trying to play down all the good things that are happening with the Trump agenda. And I think voters are going to hold them accountable. I think the Kavanaugh hearings for Hoosiers would have been the point where our race changed and many others, and I think enough was enough, and they related that to my race and many others. And I saw something Fox did on across the board, the negative advertising that just swamped, the airwaves, and that's because they're afraid of their record.
Well, again, the Democrats don't want to debate the issues because they have absolutely gone out of the business, if they ever were in the business, of proposals to actually advance our economy or grow our prosperity or enforce the border. I mean, they're just not interested in those conversations, so they resort to personal attacks, and even on issues where they agree, to some extent, like Schumer agrees with some of the things that Trump is doing on trade, he won't talk about those because you can't give the president any credit for anything, anytime, anywhere.
No doubt about it. I'll give you a great example in my race. I took on the health insurance companies about 10 years ago to make sure, the Affordable Care Act, the first word of it never was. And it was doomed to fail because you had big government hooked up with big health care, specifically insurance. And I covered pre-existing conditions and no cap on coverage. And Laura, have held premiums flat for 10 years. And it's the absolute truth, and it's kind of blown them up in the sense that they can't believe a conservative actually might have a solution for what they've, that's their pivotal issue. They think they win on that. And all I did was made it consumer-driven, made it transparent, the kind of things that you'd like in free markets, and a great result. I go to the Senate, I'll talk about that, and that's why we're going to win the race against a guy like Joe Donnelly that's been a career politician that's never had an original idea since he's been there.
No, I think that, again, when you see how absolutely nutty the left is driven by the Trump progress, the results, the economy, the fact that he's not going to be back on his heels and constantly apologizing. I mean, that's the type of Republican they like the best. They like someone like a John Kasich who's forever back on his heels and apologizing for being a conservative. And Trump's just not going to do that, and that drives the left crazy, and he calls them out on it. And I think we're long since past the time where we had that type of plain-speaking politician.
Well, I mean, thank goodness. That's exactly where I'm coming from. And Laura, the other thing you're going to get as this agenda really heals in, I talk about tax reform, and I do think it's incumbent upon conservatives, business owners, now that you've got more jingle in your pocket, share it with your employees. We've done that by further lowering health care costs after keeping them flat for 10 years, and I preach that all the time. You do that, I really believe that's the signature piece of legislation that they gambled would not be appreciated. We've had 10 months of people now adding up more money in their own pocket, and if you get business owners like us that have gone out there and touted tax reform, we want to share the benefits with your employees. People quit looking to the false hope of a federal government that the Democrats believe in that hasn't delivered over the last 2 or 3 decades, and really has put us, on the brink of a financial calamity if we don't get more people in there that are going to be able to solve things and not worry about the political ramifications. That's why I'm going, and there'll be more of us, I think, that jump on the bandwagon, stick our necks out, and join the Trump train. So I'm looking
fantastic.
forward to it.
Well, we cannot wait for Election Day, Mike. I think you're going to win this race. The people of Indiana, and we have a huge audience in Indiana, you got to get out there and vote. Get everyone you know to get to the polls. Vote for an advancing economy, an America that's growing, that's more confident and optimistic, and do not go backward. We don't want to go backward to more identity politics, more mass illegal immigration. Got to deal with this with a new Congress, close these loopholes, and Mike Braun would be fantastic in the U.S. Senate. I just can't wait for you to come to Washington. I think you're going to win this, Mike. And I'm so glad you're in this race.
We're going to win it, and I'm looking forward to it. And Laura, thanks for the support. And we're going to finish hard into the tape on the 6th, and can't wait to be a reinforcement for a great agenda.
When did you graduate from HBS, by the way?
I did in '78. Went
fantastic.
Straight out of college. Wife and I got married in '76, lived in Boston for 2 years, and then moved back to our hometown and have been here ever since. She's had a business for 40 years in our downtown as her only job, and we raised 4 kids, and 3 of the 4 kids work in my business with me.
Oh, fantastic. What a great story. Mike Braun here on the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA, Indiana. Get out and vote. Vote early. And consider your future, your children's future. What kind of future do you want for them? Don't go away.